Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Tickets. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, I greatly appreciate it. Dolphins got smacked last night on Monday Night Football. Thankfully, there was a second game going on that was much more enjoyable to watch between the Seahawks and the Lions. I'll be talking about both of those teams later on in the show when I do Top 10 Tuesday. Really quickly, Otter Creek asked me this, but before the show started in the YouTube chat, if you want to head over to Indy Sports Ticket on YouTube, you can join the live stream there, join the chat, be part of the conversation. Otter Creek asked me if I thought whether or not Tua would come back for the Dolphins or if he'd retire. He probably should retire. He's had several concussions, and they're all serious. Like, anytime you have a concussion, like, that is just not a fun thing to deal with. And when you've had as many as Tua has had, eventually, like, you should probably walk away. But at the same time, Tua's 26, 27 years old. He's worked his entire life to play quarterback in the NFL. It's incredibly hard to walk away from that, especially when you're lined up to make $53.1 million a year over the next 5 years, I believe, if I remember his contract correctly. So I think he'll come back. He'll continue to play for as long as he can. And, it'll be nerve-wracking watching him drop back every time that he does. But ultimately, it's his decision. And I can understand not wanting to walk away from that kind of money over the next several years. Got a loaded show for you today. Zach Hicks joining me at 11 o'clock to talk Colts. 2-2. It's not a pretty 2-2, but they're 2-2. Speaking of 2-2 teams, there are 13 teams in the NFL. Almost half the league is 2-2, but they are not all built the same. I'm going to do 2-2 tiers today. Top 10 Tuesday, as we do every Tuesday. But I want to start with Will Levis, who got hurt last night. And it became very apparent very quickly that Mason Rudolph, who's not very good, is way better than Will Levis. Not even close. It's not even close. And I think that through 4 weeks, then again, long season, through 4 weeks, we can comfortably say that Anthony Richardson is better than Will Levis. He is. And so, Will Levis, he's just terrible. He's not accurate. He has a bad turnover every game he plays. He leads the NFL in turnovers with 9. And look, you can question the Anthony Richardson, lack of accuracy, all that you want. But the difference for me between watching Will Levis and watching Anthony Richardson is this. The decision-making it's night and day. Like, Will Levis consistently makes bad decisions with the football. He does. Meanwhile, Anthony Richardson, outside of the second interception that he threw against the Packers, the one where I believe it was Michael Pittman, was absolutely blanketed by a corner. Outside of that, his decision-making has been good this year. He just hasn't had the accuracy to make those throws. And that is a much easier thing to fix, the accuracy part, versus the decision-making part, which is the thing that Will Levis is struggling with. Will Levis's bad start last night, thankfully he got hurt. That way we were able to see some semi-competent quarterback play in that game. His start last night got me thinking about the AFC South, and more specifically the quarterbacks in the AFC South. Before the year started, I think everyone would have agreed that the best quarterbacks in the AFC South, if you were to order them 1 through 4, the list would have been C.J. Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, then either Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, depending on who you preferred. But now that we're 4 weeks into the season, here's how I would rank the quarterbacks in the AFC South based off of how they have played this year. C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence, and then Will Levis. And it pains me to say it, because if you listen to my show before the year started, I was high on Trevor Lawrence. I was high on the Jacksonville Jaguars. But now they're 0-4. Trevor Lawrence is terrible. And they're not very much fun to watch. And as of today, based off what we've seen through these first 4 games, 13 games left in the season, this could change. But based off of what we've seen through these first 4 games, I think I definitely would, prefer to have Anthony Richardson than Trevor Lawrence. Now, I love Trevor Lawrence. I think what we've seen through these first 4 games isn't who he's going to be long term, but he's been nothing short of awful this year. And I hope that continues this week as the Colts head down there and hopefully improve to 3-2. He has undoubtedly been worse than Anthony Richardson. Trevor Lawrence is only completing 53% of his passes, and he's not pushing the ball down the field. His yards per attempt is only 6, which is incredibly low. He's only throwing for, on average, 182 yards a game. The only positive thing he's done this year is the 4 touchdown passes to the 1 interception, which really isn't even that great. He's not turning the ball over. That's the only positive thing that Trevor Lawrence is doing. Okay, ultimately, he's not keeping drives alive, and he's not creating big plays. When it comes to the keeping drives alive part, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 11 for 44 on third downs this year. They've only converted on 11 of 44 third downs. That's horrifically bad. It's terrible. Okay, he's not doing much. Okay, he definitely isn't playing like a quarterback that's worth $55 million a year, right? He signed that big deal in the offseason. Meanwhile, with Anthony Richardson, let's be honest, he's not much better. I'm sure there's some people out there who, when I said that I would rather have Anthony Richardson as opposed to Trevor Lawrence through these first 4 games, I'm sure some of you said I was crazy. That's fine. Anthony Richardson's only completing 50% of his passes this year, but his yards per attempt is much higher at 8.5. Okay, through the first 4 games, he's only thrown for 163.5 yards a game, but he missed, most of that game against Pittsburgh. Through the first 3 weeks, Anthony Richardson was at 194 passing yards per game. So the yards are up a little bit. The completion percentage is down a bit, but the yards per attempt is higher. He's pushing the ball down the field more than Trevor Lawrence, which is something that I want in my quarterback. But if you want to say, well, Anthony Richardson turns the ball over too much, then hey, you got me. I won't push back on that at all. He's thrown 6 interceptions this year, 3 of them coming against the Packers. Okay, 3 touchdowns to 6 interceptions on the year isn't very good. But the big difference, I think, between Anthony Richardson and Trevor Lawrence, and why I would prefer to have Anthony Richardson, is because of the running ability. Extra element of the offense that allows you just to move the football a little bit better. And while Trevor Lawrence is a capable athlete, he's not going to tuck the ball 12 times a game, and go run for 80 yards like Anthony Richardson is more than capable of doing, right? So I would rather have Anthony Richardson over Trevor Lawrence so far through this season. And the thing about this, I say all this just to set up that this is not a pro Anthony Richardson take. This is not an anti-Trevor Lawrence take. This is a take about how the AFC South is the worst division in the NFL. And it's not particularly close. So much of a team's success is about the quarterback position. The AFC South has the worst collection of quarterbacks in the NFL. So it's the worst division. It's truly that simple. There isn't a worse foursome of quarterbacks in the NFL than C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence, and Will Levis. The NFC South, a division that people had questions about coming into the year, has better teams and better quarterbacks. They just do. The foursome of Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Andy Dalton, and who's the last one? I'm blanking here. And Baker Mayfield. That foursome's way better than Stroud, Richardson, Lawrence, and Levis. The NFC East is terrible. They have a better collection of quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, and Jaden Daniels. That's a much better collection of quarterbacks than C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence, and Will Levis. Okay? The AFC South is hands down the worst division in the NFL. And that means the Colts will have a chance in every divisional game that they play. If Trevor Lawrence continues to play like this, then Anthony Richardson and the Colts should have ample opportunity to win on Sunday, to break this, 9-game losing streak, whatever it is, of games played in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay? And it's one of these things where, just looking ahead to Sunday, if Anthony Richardson, because I do think he's going to play, if Anthony Richardson can generate two big plays on two separate drives that set up touchdowns, that could legitimately be enough. That is how bad this Jacksonville Jaguars offense is. That's how bad Trevor Lawrence has been this year. And when it comes to them playing the Titans, who they play in 2 weeks, same thing. Like, Will Levis is so bad. Like, it's the exact same scenario. Maybe by that point, Will Levis gets benched and it's Mason Rudolph, who's not much better. He's a career backup for a reason. But it's the same thing. Like, the Colts are sitting at 2-2. And because the Titans and the Jags are so awful, they're going to have a chance to win this division. Now, in order to do it, they need to win at least 3 of 4 games against the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. If they can win all 4, then I'll love their chances. Hopefully, they can make it happen. They obviously have to win on Sunday for that to be an opportunity that they have. But this AFC South division's terrible. It's awful. It's the worst in the league, and because of that, the Colts have a chance to win that division. Moving on to baseball, I don't talk a ton of baseball. Not a team here in Indy. It's a regional thing. Cubs aren't, in the playoffs this year. Cardinals didn't make the playoffs either. The Reds didn't make the playoffs. I haven't met a single Milwaukee Brewers fan since I moved here, so I'm assuming that there's not a ton of you guys out there. But a baseball legend died yesterday, and so I wanted to address Pete Rose's death and how he should have been in the Hall of Fame. My argument's not based on much. I just pretty much simply believe that the all-time Major League Baseball hits leader should be in the Hall of Fame. Guy with over 4,000 hits in his career. It's really that simple. Okay. Oh, well, Jonathan, he bet on baseball. I gotta be honest. I don't care. I don't care that he bet on baseball. Okay. Barry Bonds should probably be in the Hall of Fame as well. I don't care that he did steroids. Oh, but Jonathan, it ruins the integrity of the game. You're probably right, but I don't care. They were both great baseball players that contributed to the vast history of baseball. The Hall of Fames of every sport, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, whatever, all of them are supposed to be museums to their sport. And museums are designed to show us the history of, whatever. I had a great opportunity this summer to go to some of the Smithsonian's, and they were incredible. Oh, they were just awesome. And if there was a, Smithsonian of baseball history, then Pete Rose would undoubtedly be in it because he's the all-time hits leader. Okay, and that's what these Hall of Fames should be. They are museums to their sport. So players that have significant history in the game should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't care if they did steroids. I don't care if they bet on baseball. I don't care. And Pete Rose undoubtedly checks that box. Undoubtedly. And I sadly never got to see him play based off of everything that I know about him, based off of every interview that I've seen him do, based off of what I've heard different people say about him. I feel like I would have just loved to have watched him play. Played hard. And that's a trait that I love in any professional athlete. Okay, Charlie Hustle, right? Like that was his nickname. And I feel like I just would have loved to have watched him play baseball for those Reds teams. And the craziest thing, I think a large part of why I'm so fond of Pete Rose is because he helped me break out of a slump when I was in college. I'll never forget this video as long as I live. But he went on a popular TV show that I like to watch. And, some some Major League Baseball player was struggling, and the guy asking the questions was like, "Hey, how did you break out of slumps?" And Pete Rose gives this long-winded answer. That's just incredible. He starts talking about how, like your swing is what gets you to the major leagues, right? He's like, when guys go into slumps, they want to change their swing. And he's like, wow. He's like, why would you do that? The reason why you're playing Major League Baseball is because of your swing. He's like, so here's what you should do. He's like, you have to identify, what pitch is beating you, right? He's like, if you're getting beat by the fastball, scoot back in the box. If you're getting beat by the breaking ball, scoot up in the box. If you're getting jammed a lot, back away from the plate. If you're capping everything, scoot up on the plate. It was the most simple thing I'd ever heard. And I was like, I'm going to try this. And I remember I was getting beat by, I was getting jammed a lot. So I backed up like half a step off the plate. Next thing I knew, man, just piecing the ball all over the yard. All over the yard. Ended up having a pretty decent year that year. And, I mean, I just really wish I would have gotten to see him play because he's an absolute legend in every sense of the word. He should undoubtedly be in the Hall of Fame. There is no question in my mind whatsoever. Okay. He's the all-time Major League Baseball hits leader. Like, do you need any other reasoning to put him in the Hall of Fame? He is a major piece of baseball history, and he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's an absolute legend in every sense of the word. Rob Dibble, who played for Pete Rose in Cincinnati, he's set to join the Dan Dockett Show today at 1 o'clock. I'm sure he's going to have great stories. You're going to want to hear that. 1 o'clock, the Dan Dockett Show. Rob Dibble played for Pete Rose. He's going to be on. You want to hear this interview. It's going to be great. It's sad that he passed. Absolute baseball legend, and hopefully baseball does the right thing and puts him in the Hall of Fame sooner rather than later because he played a major, major role in the history of Major League Baseball. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, it's Tuesday, which means Top 10 Tuesday is here, the 10 best teams in the NFL. I'm going to tell you who they are when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, I greatly appreciate it. Just wrapped up talking Pete Rose and how he should be in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame because he's the all-time hits leader. It's really that simple. Barry Bonds should be too, for what it's worth. Okay? He should be. I can talk about this another time. Top 10 Tuesday. That's what I teased. So that's the tease that I need to pay off. So Top 10 Tuesday. The 10 best teams in the NFL. We are about a quarter of the way through the season. And, I love the NFL. It's great. I love 2 Monday Night Football games because if one game's terrible, you can just watch the other. That's what's happened these last 2 weeks. Okay, and I'm so glad. Could you imagine having to just watch that Dolphins and Titans game without any other option? Oh, that'd have been brutal. Top 10 Tuesday. Here we go. Number 10 on the list. These are the top 10 teams in the NFL. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are reappearing on the list. They can score with the best of them. Simple as that. This is a high-powered offense. They're tied for 9th in the NFL in points per game. Baker Mayfield is slowly putting together the best year of his career. Mike Evans, he's still got it. I don't know how old that dude is. I know he's been in the league for over a decade. It doesn't seem to matter, though. He's just going to, have another year where he has 1,000 receiving yards because he's awesome. Chris Godwin, down year last year, playing incredibly well this year. You could argue he's been better than Mike Evans. That's how well Chris Godwin's playing. They're back to being this dynamic duo that they were when Tom Brady was there. Okay, and because this offense is so high-powered, the defense is simply good enough. They're a good football team, but they're slightly limited because, look, I like Baker. He's done a good job for them this year. He's been, he did a good job for him last year. But I think we all know that Baker Mayfield's a little limited. Okay, like he's not as good as, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud. And so because of that, I have to leave them a little bit lower on my list. Number 9, making their first appearance on Top 10 Tuesday, the 10 best teams in the NFL, the Washington Commanders. They could win the NFC East. Legitimately, I bet them at plus 290 to win the NFC East earlier this week. They have the third lowest odds. The Eagles and the Cowboys are still favored to win the NFC East over the Washington Commanders. I don't know how much you've watched the Commanders, Eagles, and Cowboys, but the Commanders are hands down the best of those 3 teams through these first 4 weeks. Okay, the offense has been one of the 3 best in the NFL. Them and Detroit, I would argue, have been the 2 best offenses in the NFL to start the season. Jaden Daniels off to a hot start. They just don't punt ever. Okay? Like they just don't. Jaden Daniels has been really good. I think Cliff Kingsbury's done a good job of just making things easy on him. Okay? Like when it comes to Jaden Daniels, it's a lot of short, easy throws with some deep shots from time to time. Jaden Daniels has been highly accurate. Okay? They've got some good weapons around him. Obviously, Terry McLaurin kind of leads that charge. They can run the ball. Austin Eckler's having a good year. I know he's been a little banged up, but the offensive line has done a good job. They're protecting Jaden Daniels. And Dan Quinn has, unsurprisingly, come in and helped that defense be good. The Washington Commanders are a good football team. Hopefully you listened to me before the year started and you took them at over 6.5 wins on the season. Moving on, number 8 for the top 10 teams in the NFL. The Houston Texans. Dan's right. They don't score a ton of points, but neither do the Kansas City Chiefs. And CJ Stroud has this thing in common with Patrick Mahomes where he just consistently makes plays at the end of games to lead his team to victories. Seriously, that's just what CJ Stroud does. We saw him do it once again this last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This defense for the Houston Texans is much improved from last year. They rush the quarterback well. Their linebackers are much improved at stopping the run. They've got a good secondary. D'Amico Ryans, one of the better coaches in the NFL, defensive minded. Like, they're 3-1 and they don't score a ton of points, which means that their defense doesn't give up very many points. Okay, like they have a lot of talent on both sides of the football. That receiving core, you could argue it's the best in the NFL. Okay, like a lot of talent, good head coach. I just want to see more from the Houston Texans offense before I move them up higher on the list. Number 7, the Green Bay Packers. Matt LaFleur has done an excellent job this year. If someone had told you that the Green Bay Packers were 2-2 and that Jordan Love had missed 2 games before the year started, they would have been like, oh, they probably lost the 2 games that Malik Willis played and won the 2 games that Jordan Love played. And that, as we all know, is not the case. They're 2-0 with Malik Willis, 0-2 with Jordan Love. Quarterback controversy? No, I'm just kidding. But I have some questions about Jordan Love. Something that Matt LaFleur does incredibly well is give his quarterback easy completions. That's part of why Malik Willis succeeded so much when he was, filling in for Jordan Love those 2 weeks that he was out. And then I watched Jordan Love on Sunday, and he just didn't want to take any of the easy throws that Matt LaFleur created for him. And because he didn't want to do that, and he has games like this, I think it's part of why the first 8 games of last year he struggled. He has games where he just doesn't want to take those easy throws, and it leads to him throwing 3 interceptions like he did on Sunday. Okay, it's an easy fix just to get him to tone it down a little bit, but until it's fixed, it's going to be tough for Packers to win games because Jordan Love's going to continue to turn the football over until he starts to take those easy completions that Matt LaFleur created for him. Number 6, the Buffalo Bills. I know they got crushed on Sunday, but it doesn't erase the first 3 weeks of the season. Okay, this was the first week where the injuries that they have on the defensive side of the football felt obvious. Not having Milano clearly hurt their run defense. It's why Derrick Henry ran all over the field, and Justice Hill had a great week as well. But that's not an excuse. You have to deal with injuries in the NFL. Every team has injuries. Every team has to deal with them. Okay, so the Bills are going to have to figure out how to shore up that run defense as long as for the entire time that Milano is out. Josh Allen is still awesome, but they clearly missed Stephon Diggs in the game against Baltimore. Like, they need a weapon on the outside to make things easier, and I think Stephon Diggs would have made their offense a little bit easier against that Baltimore Ravens defense on Sunday Night Football. Number 5, the Seattle Seahawks. They lost by 13 last night to the Lions, but they're still one of the better NFL teams. Geno Smith. Look, we talk about Anthony Richardson a lot here on this show because he's the biggest story in Indianapolis right now. Geno Smith was awful to start his career, and he improved over time and is now one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't know if you got to watch him last night, but he was just surgical. I mean, he's just ripping the ball all over the field. All over the field. The only reason why the Seahawks had any chance to win that game last night is because of Geno Smith. But their defense gave up 42 points. Look, I don't care. I still think that the Seahawks have one of the best defenses in the NFL. They just caught Jared Goff and Ben Johnson on a night where they had everything clicking. Jared Goff was 18 of 18, 292 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, even had a receiving touchdown just to add insult to injury. Okay, like it was just a night where the Lions had everything going, and there's no defense for perfect offense. There isn't. So Seahawks at 5. Number 4, the Baltimore Ravens played their best game of the year on Sunday night, and they needed to. Their defense looked great. They looked fast. They looked physical. It finally looked like what you expect to see from a Baltimore Ravens defense. Physical, fast, flying around the field. It was fun to watch. And then Lamar Jackson played a great game. Derrick Henry ran the ball incredibly well. 199 rushing yards is, I would take that personally, right? This version of the Ravens, run the football, tough, hard-nosed defense. This version that we got on Sunday night is one of the best teams in the NFL, right? And they needed to be on Sunday to avoid a 1-3 start. They're 2-2, but they're still one of the best teams in the NFL. Number 3, the Lions. They looked like the Lions of last year last night. Jared Goff, just surgical. Just 18 of 18, 292 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, a receiving touchdown just for kicks. Okay, he set the record for most passing attempts in a game without an incompletion last night. He was awesome. Okay, all of their offensive weapons got involved. Okay, Jameson Williams had, made plays. Amon-Ra St. Brown made plays. Jahmyr Gibbs scored. David Montgomery scored. I mean, Sam Laporta had several receptions. I mean, it was an offensive clinic from the Lions last night. All right, and then their defense played incredibly well. The run defense is much improved. Okay, they get after the passer incredibly well. Aiden Hutchinson, one of the best young pass rushers in the NFL. Okay, Geno Smith put up a bunch of yards. He played well, but their secondary made some big plays in the red zone, and that's ultimately why they were able to win the football game. Okay, and once again, like, Geno Smith was just awesome last night, right? Part of why he threw for so many yards on this Detroit defense is because he just made some great plays, and DK Metcalf made a couple great plays as well. The Lions last night, though, they looked like the team that I predicted to win the NFC before the year started last night. Okay, if that's the version that we get from them the rest of the way, and it probably won't be because it's hard to play that perfect of offense week in and week out. But if they do, like, that's the best team in the NFC. Number 2, the Minnesota Vikings. They've been the most complete team this year, so they have to be on the list. They just have been. Sam Darnold's playing the best football of his career, 11 touchdowns to 3 interceptions on the year. Yet another example, Colts fans, of quarterbacks improving over time. Their offense is rolling. Kevin O'Connell is emerging as one of the best head coaches in the NFL. I think I might have said that before the year started. Anyway, they dominated the Packers. And then late, I know Packers come back, but Vikings took their foot off the gas. Not a big deal, okay? Their defense was dominant for most of the game. Brian Flores getting after Jordan Love, forcing him into 3 turnovers, and their offense just continues to put up points. Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, Sam Darnold just moving the ball up and down the field. It's been incredibly fun to watch. And then, of course, number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't like putting them at 1 because they just haven't looked as good as everybody else, but they're the Chiefs. They have Patrick Mahomes, and they just continue to find ways to win. They've won 10 games in a row now. That's incredible. Their point differential, this is nuts. Their point differential in these 10 wins is only 61 points. They have won 10 straight games by a combined score of 61 points. Every game that they play is incredibly close, and they figure out how to win every single one. It is a skill at this point. Patrick Mahomes, after their win against the Chargers, is now 12-0 when trailing by exactly 10 points. It's just nuts. It's nuts. And here's the thing with the Chiefs. They are not about Patrick Mahomes in this offense once again. Last year, the reason why they won the Super Bowl was because of their defense. And once again, this Kansas City Chiefs defense is elite. Steve Spagnuolo is the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. He could potentially retire as the best defensive coordinator ever. Okay, he's won more Super Bowls as a coordinator than anyone else in the history of the NFL. Right? There's a lot of talent on this defense. Okay, and Mahomes makes the offense just good enough to win these close games. It'll be interesting to see how they adjust without Rashee Rice for the rest of the year. Okay, we're going to see a lot more Travis Kelce. We're going to see a lot more Xavier Worthy. And I don't know where they're going to go outside of that. So to answer some questions that I'm sure you have, why aren't the 49ers on here? They haven't beaten anyone good. That's just the simple reality of it. Okay. Also, McCaffrey, he's not playing right now. I have questions about Brock Purdy without Christian McCaffrey. Okay, like their 2 wins this year are over the Patriots and who's the other awful team that they beat? I know that they lost to the Rams. That's the Rams' only win of the season, but I've just got questions. Like they just don't look the same without Christian McCaffrey. And when he comes back, they'll look better, but when is he going to come back? We don't really know. I mean, he's in Germany getting his foot looked at, or his Achilles. There are other wins over the Jets who aren't super impressive. So that's why they aren't on there. They haven't beaten anyone good. Okay, why no Steelers? They're just severely limited on offense. That's the really short and simple answer. I didn't even consider anyone else to make my list of the top 10 teams in the NFL. So there it is. Those are your top 10 teams in the NFL. Starting at 10, the Buccaneers, 9, the Commanders, 8, the Texans, 7, the Packers, 6, the Bills, 5, the Seahawks, 4, the Ravens, 3, the Lions, 2, the Vikings, and then number 1, your defending Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. When we come back here in 4 minutes, 2-2, popular record in the NFL. There are 13 teams in the NFL that are 2-2. It's early in the year. Not every 2-2 team is the same. I'm going to tell you the difference between all of them when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Total sports coverage on Indy Sports Ticket is sponsored by Twin Peaks. Eats, drinks, scenic views.
People join Walk MS to raise awareness and funds that change the world for everyone affected by multiple sclerosis. MS attacks the brain and spinal cord. It's the most common neurological disease leading to disability in young adults. Walk MS brings communities together, creating teams with friends, loved ones, and coworkers to rally around
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, I greatly appreciate it, whether you're listening via the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps. Maybe you're watching on YouTube. Head over to YouTube, search for Indy's Sports Ticket. You can watch the live stream of the show over there, right? Or you can listen to 14:30 a.m. if you're in the Indianapolis area. If you're on YouTube or if you're on Twitter, follow me there at __ Jonathan Smith. Answer this question for me. Should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame? The answer is yes. And should Barry Bonds be in the Hall of Fame? The answer should also be yes. Moving on to the 2-2 tiers, because there's 13 teams in the NFL that are 2-2, including your Indianapolis Colts. I'll be joined by Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts here in about 15 minutes, and we're going to talk about these 2-2 Colts, what the rest of the year looks like, and what they did well, what they didn't do well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So 4 weeks into the year, 13 teams are 2-2. Not every 2-2 team is the same. Some have dealt with injuries. Some have had tough schedules. Others have had easy schedules. And so as I sat back and looked at these 13 2-2 teams, I was like, some of these teams just aren't the same. Some of these teams just aren't the same. Some feel like definite playoff teams. Most of them feel like, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but there is definitely a path for that to happen. And then there are other ones where I'm like, there's not a chance these teams are making the playoffs. So I'm going to start at the bottom here and give you the 2-2 teams that will not make the playoffs this season. The Las Vegas Raiders, the 2-2, got a big win over the Ravens. And when that happened, everyone was like, ooh, watch out for the Raiders. Don't watch out for the Raiders. Sorry. I don't trust a team quarterbacked by Gardner Minshew, and I also don't trust Antonio Pierce. Simple as that. That's really it for me. I don't trust the head coach. I don't trust the quarterback. I know they're 2-2. One of those wins came against the Browns, who, as we all know, aren't very good. So, yeah, Raiders, probably not a playoff team. Next 2-2 team that will not make the playoffs, the Denver Broncos. They're going to win at least 6 games this year, but they will not make the playoffs. Bo Nix hasn't been great to start his career. Do you remember when everyone freaked out because he played well in the preseason? You know, there were Colts fans like, he's better than Anthony Richardson already. And then he threw for 60 yards on Sunday and they won, which is nuts. Okay. Like, I just don't think that Bo Nix is going to be good enough for the Broncos in order for them to make the playoffs. The division that they're in is relatively tough, having to deal with the Chargers and the Chiefs. So Denver Broncos probably not making the playoffs this year. Next, the Philadelphia Eagles. Nick Sirianni's going to get fired at some point. I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't happened yet. And usually teams that fire their head coach in the middle of the year, usually those teams do not make the playoffs. Okay, Jalen Hurts hasn't played very well this year. Their defense isn't very good. They've got issues everywhere. Coaching issues, talent issues, depth issues. And yeah, when Nick Sirianni gets fired, things are just going to spiral out of control. Philadelphia Eagles are not making the playoffs this year. The Chicago Bears. I like the Bears. Of all the teams that I've put in this not a playoff team tier, the Bears are the ones that I'm the least confident in. I like their defense. I just don't trust their offense. But there is undoubtedly a scenario where Caleb Williams continues to improve. He's gotten better in every game that he's played. There's a world where, like, he turns a corner, the offense kind of figures it out, and then they sneak in. But they're in a really tough division with the Packers and the Vikings, and I think that'll cost them a playoff spot. So the Bears will not make the playoffs this year, despite starting 2-2. Next, final team in the not a playoff team tier for my teams that are 2-2 tiers. The New Orleans Saints. Everyone was excited. It's like, oh, the Saints, 40-plus points against the Carolina Panthers and the Dallas Cowboys. It's like, yeah, they scored a whole bunch of points against two bad defenses. And then these last 2 weeks, they've come back down to earth because they've played teams that aren't the Dallas Cowboys or the Carolina Panthers. It's like, did we really think that a Derek Carr-led team was going to be really good? Come on now. We're all smarter than that. We're all way smarter than that. So those are the 2-2 teams that I have not making the playoffs this year. Next tier, potential playoff teams. Teams where if they made the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised. Teams, if they didn't make the playoffs, I would also not be surprised. The San Francisco 49ers, 2-2, but I'm worried about injuries. They've already been banged up some this year. George Kittle's missed a game. Deebo Samuel's already missed a game. Christian McCaffrey hasn't played all year. They've been banged up. And on the Christian McCaffrey note, he's in Germany working on his Achilles, which is never a good thing. It's probably not where you want to be. Okay? They're the oldest team in the NFL, so injuries are always a concern. They have more 30-year-olds on their roster than any other team in the league. And here's the thing. I just don't think that Brock Purdy alone is good enough to get them to the playoffs. He needs his weapons. He needs Christian McCaffrey. He needs Deebo Samuel. He needs Brandon Ayuk. He needs George Kittle. He needs Trent Williams to protect his blind side, which makes sense because every quarterback needs a good left tackle. But Brock Purdy needs his weapons if he's going to take this team to the playoffs. Next, in my potential playoff teams tier, I have the New York Jets. I really didn't want to put them here. I wanted to put them in the not a playoff team tier, but let's be honest. You can't count out Aaron Rodgers, even though the Jets are dysfunctional. And I just saw this Aaron Rodgers-led offense only scored 9 points against the Broncos. Robert Saleh doesn't have the highest approval rating, but the Jets have had a consistently good defense since he showed up. That's a credit to him. His side of the ball wasn't the issue on Sunday. It was the offense, and it's hard to count out Aaron Rodgers. So I've got them as a potential playoff team. The Indianapolis Colts, this is where they reside, and it's pretty simple for the Colts. Anthony Richardson gives the Colts the ability to make the playoffs, and he also gives the Colts the ability to miss the playoffs. If he figures things out, and maybe he did against the Steelers, I don't know. We didn't get to see the full game. If he figures things out, then they'll make the playoffs. It's really that simple. So that's what's going on with the Colts. If it ends up being Joe Flacco, like if Richardson misses a bunch of time, I don't think this Colts team can make the playoffs. The Chargers, potential playoff team, undoubtedly. They're going to be in every game that they play. They have a good defense. They have a good quarterback. They have no weapons. That's kind of the concern. They're going to have to win a lot of games, like 20-17, to kind of pave their way to the playoffs. That's kind of my concern for them. They need just a little bit more offense. Next on the list, the Dallas Cowboys. Defense is atrocious. It's one of the worst in the NFL. It looked better against the Giants, but it's the Giants. Right? The reason why they're a potential playoff team is because they do have Dak Prescott and they do have CeeDee Lamb. Okay, CeeDee Lamb, one of the more explosive receivers in the NFL. Dak Prescott, top 10-ish quarterback in the NFL. It's kind of where he's at. And so they could make the playoffs. They could sneak in as a wild card, and if they do, they'll lose in the first round like they always do, because that's what the Cowboys do with Dak Prescott as their starting quarterback. So they're a potential playoff team that started 2-2, and then the Falcons, same thing here. They've had some good moments. They've had some bad ones. Okay, they looked bad week 1 against the Steelers. Week 2, they beat the Eagles. That game was crazy. Week 3, played the Chiefs close, but lost. That's what everyone does with the Chiefs. Then this week, they squeak out a win against the Saints. I like Kirk Cousins. I think he'll improve as the year goes on, but I have questions about their defense, especially the pass rush. So they're a potential playoff team if they can just kind of figure out that side of the ball. Of all of the 2-2 teams, of the 13 of them, there are only 2 teams that stick out as this team is definitely going to make the playoffs. The Green Bay Packers are one of them. They made the playoffs last year after starting 2-5. This 2-2 start, if you're a Packers fan, shouldn't scare you in the slightest. Okay, so if they lose 4 in a row and they start 2-6, I will then be concerned. Okay, I'm not worried about Jordan Love and the 3 interceptions that he threw on Sunday. First game back, a little over-aggressive. Matt LaFleur, one of the better coaches in the NFL, is going to get him turned around. And this team should make the playoffs. I don't think that they'll win that division. Seems like the Vikings are going to win it. They've got a 2-game lead on the Packers. So They're probably going to make it as a wild card. I like the defense. Jair Alexander didn't play against the Vikings. That's a guy that would have followed Justin Jefferson, and that definitely would have helped them play better. But the Packers are a playoff team. Like, let's not overthink this. I know they're 2-2, but they are a playoff team. Good defense, good offensive line, good quarterback. We'll see how they do. Next, for my 2-2 tiers, the other team that is 2-2 and should make the playoffs, I think everyone would agree on, is the Baltimore Ravens. I don't think I really need to explain this after they crushed the Bills on Sunday. They're the best 2-2 team in the NFL. They are. Okay. It's Lamar Jackson. Defense is good, much improved from week 1 until now. John Harbaugh has a way of figuring things out as a coach, and I expect them to overtake the Steelers and honestly win that division. So those are my 2-2 team tiers. Moving on, Major League Baseball playoffs start today. Tigers kick it off at 2:30, National League wild card. Can't wait. Cannot wait. I love playoff baseball. I gotta be honest, I very rarely watch the regular season because regular season baseball is incredibly boring. No other way around it. Tigers play the Astros today at 2:30. Can't wait to watch that. I like the Astros. I know a lot of people don't. I love Jose Altuve. He's one of my favorite players ever. Okay. I was a short middle infielder, and that is exactly what Jose Altuve is. That game starts at 2:30. Can't wait to watch that. 4:00 Royals, Orioles, Bobby Witt Jr. Can't wait to watch him play Orioles. That's obviously, one of the better teams in baseball. Just a lot of games today. And I cannot wait. Playoff baseball is one of the best things in sports. Okay. It is also the most dramatically shifting sport from the regular season to the playoffs, just in terms of the energy, right? Like, obviously, there's a different energy in the crowd for regular season football games in the NFL as compared to playoff games, but baseball is just different, right? Like, you go to game 87, people are just kind of hanging out watching. You go to a playoff game, people are on their feet, screaming, yelling. It's an absolute blast. And I cannot wait to watch these games. Once again, they start 2:30. Jason Benetti on the call for the Tigers as the Tigers go on the road to take on the Houston Astros. That game should be just a ton of fun to watch. The Tigers have been one of the better stories in baseball to start the year. Cannot wait to watch that game. Once again, first pitch is at 2:30. I also can't wait to have Zach Hicks on. He's set to join me here in about 5 minutes. We're going to talk Colts, 2-2, right? One back-to-back games. Hopefully they can keep it rolling as they go on the road to take on Jacksonville on Sunday. Zach Hicks set to join me here in about 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in. Joining me now, because it's 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, as he does every 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. Zach, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, man. Look, September started off kind of rough. We got to 500 by the end of the month, though, so can't complain too much at all.
We really can't. That was my first question. I was like, do you remember when the sky was falling, when the Colts were 0-2 and everyone was freaking out?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, if you told me before the season they would lose to the Texans and the Packers and then beat the Bears and Steelers, I'd be like, all right, yeah, that totally makes sense. Now, again, the context of the Packers situation was Malik Willis was the starting quarterback, and it's unfortunate they lost that game. But overall, getting out of September 2-2, got a relatively winnable stretch here of 3 games before they got that really tough 5-game stretch after that. So, they're entering a part of the season that's going to be make or break. But it's always good to get out of a month at least 500 in the NFL. If you can go at least 500 in each month, you'll be a playoff team or a fringe playoff team. So successful September for a team that typically starts extremely slow and doesn't do really well out of the gate.
Yeah, these last 2 weeks, what do you think is the biggest difference between like why the Colts started 0-2 versus 2-2, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, offensively, I think one of the biggest things, honestly, has been Josh Downs being back. I mean, it is so, I mean, you could see it this past weekend, just the impact that Josh Downs has on the football field. He is everything that the Colts need in the short passing game. I mean, even when Richardson was out there for a couple snaps, they connected for a nice little short game that went for 11 yards. And Downs was so crucial on third downs, keeping the offense on the field. I really do think that he's been such a big part of this. But when it comes to the defense, I think just figuring out the run defense too. I mean, I know they've had 2 easier games in terms of opponents than maybe the Green Bay Packers, who I think are still like the number 1 rush offense in football right now.
Yeah.
So it kind of made it a little bit easier going against the Bears, who are just a mess on the run game, and the Steelers, who are better but not fantastic. So it's kind of like what we talked about with the defense. Like, you can be bad on run defense or bad on pass defense, just don't be bad on both. And we've kind of seen these last couple of weeks with the pass defense where they've been a pretty good run defense and an awful pass defense, but like that's been fine. That's winnable right there compared to those first 2 weeks where they were just awful in both. So I think, just the defense figuring out the run game, the run defense, and then the offense getting back Josh Downs, getting a little bit more into a rhythm has been a lot more comfortable. I mean, they're averaging 25 points per game these last 2 games and these wins, like much cleaner offensive system so far, and doing some better things on that side of the ball.
Yeah, they've definitely looked a lot better these last 2 weeks. I'm curious to know, once again, joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts. That's a great Colts podcast that you can listen to every day. I'm curious to know, Zach, did you do what I did after the Colts game? Did you run to, FanDuel or DraftKings and put a whole bunch of money down on Joe Flacco to win the MVP? Because, I mean, he has to be the front runner for MVP after the way that I saw some of these Colts fans reacting to his 16 for 26 for 160 yards passing. I mean, he's just amazing.
Yeah, like, look, man. Yeah, I love Joe. Man, it sucks that this has to be a Flacco versus Richardson thing with some people because,
Agreed.
like, Flacco came in and did what a backup quarterback, especially what a 40-year-old backup quarterback is supposed to do. He came in, stabilized the offense, wasn't perfect. Like, he took way too many sacks. He missed some throws and forced some things, but he came in, stabilized the offense, and when they needed to convert on third down, he made some big-time throws for the team and was able to get just enough points to put the game away. Like, that's commendable. That's a good thing. Like, I'm glad that he was able to do that. Is starting the Flacco starting conversation even worth entertaining? Not really. Like, because if you really want to see what happens if you start Flacco, just go back and rewatch every single Colts game from 2019 to 2023, and you'll see exactly where that gets you. Like, the best part of the best possible scenario if Flacco's your starter is the 2020 Colts, where it's losing in the first round of the playoffs. The worst possible scenario is the Matt Ryan Colts in 2022, where you're just a train wreck of a team. Like, you don't have a ceiling with that. Like, when you draft Anthony Richardson, you draft him for the long-term ceiling, and you live with the bumps and bruises, which we've talked about on this show this endless times in the weeks I've come on here. But yeah, it is kind of funny. Just, they see a quarterback come in who's operational. Like, I again, all the love in the world. Joe Flacco came in, was efficient in the short game, converted on third downs, which are two things that Richardson has not been this year. So I will give Flacco credit for that. But on the other side of it, Flacco comes in the game, the run game completely dies because you don't have that +1 QB threat of running with Richardson. So the run game completely dies when Flacco comes in. You all of a sudden are taking a ton of sacks with an offensive line that has not allowed any sacks this year, like barely any sacks this year. And then you lose the explosive play. Like, Richardson was out there for 13 snaps and the Colts had 4 explosive plays. Flacco was out there for 53 and they had 4 explosive plays with him. So they had 8 explosives in this game, and 4 of them came with Richardson in the game. Like, it's just such a different dynamic. And I understand when you see drives not going 3 and out, and you see short completions turning into first downs and third down conversions. Like, that's so, like, appealing considering what we've always seen from Richardson this first month. But I think it's easier to obviously teach Richardson to hit the layups than it is to turn Flacco into this guy who's going to impact the run game, hit explosives on a consistent level like Richardson has, and avoid sacks. So yeah, it's a ridiculous conversation. I'm happy for Joe. This is why you bring in a backup quarterback, to where, it's a 17-game season. Quarterbacks get banged up. If your backup needs to play for a couple quarters or a game or two, they can win you that game and keep you alive for the playoffs. That's exactly what Flacco was brought in to do, and he did it. So yeah, it's a ridiculous conversation to pin Flacco versus Richardson, because it's just not a thing whatsoever. The Colts aren't even entertaining it. But, just from a pure football sense, great job, Joe. Like, thank you for getting us a win, or for holding on to that win and keeping playoff hopes alive. That's all you want out of your backup quarterback.
Yep, I completely agree. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked on Colts. Yeah, Joe Flacco's a good backup. Like, if Sam Ehlinger's playing in that game, do the Colts win? I don't know. But because it was Joe Flacco, like, they were able to pull it off. Like you said, he converted a couple crucial third downs. But I still think my biggest takeaway from the game was how awesome the offense looked from Anthony Richardson. In that 1.5 drives that he was a part of. It really kind of feels like we missed on, like, a big breakout game from Richardson. Then again, like, when you're going off of scripted plays, things seem to go better for every quarterback. Who knows how he would have gone as the game progressed, but I was extremely encouraged from those first, 15 plays that we saw from Richardson. What'd you think about how he looked to start the game?
Yeah, it was clearly his best start to a game this year. I mean, obviously you could say the Texans game because the bomb to Pierce, but I think this, just from an operational standpoint, this was the best we had seen from Richardson to start the year. I mean, this offense was clicking on all cylinders in those. It was 13 plays that Richardson was out there. I think they had like 125 or 130 yards of offense in 13 plays against the number 1 defense in football that limits yards, limits the run game, limits points. He was driving them down for their second scoring drive on a defense that's been allowing 8 points per game. He was going down for his second scoring drive halfway through the first quarter. The first one was cake. Like, they moved the ball down the field with ease. Like, it looked like he was going to have a great day. Now, we don't know with Richardson. It takes 1 or 2 sailed passes to turn a great day into a bad day. So it's hard to really project how the rest of his game would have looked. But in the 13 snaps we saw some really, really good, efficient play. 2 outstanding throws to start the game, both to Michael Pittman Jr., a near 30-yard run as well from Richardson. I know we fumbled at the end of it, but, big time run from him too. Like, these are big time explosive plays that he was creating, and he was doing against one of the better defenses in football. So yeah, it's unfortunate he left. I mean, it's good that it appears like it's an injury that won't keep him out long at all. Like, he should be back this week, and if not, he'll be back against the Titans. So, a normal quarterback injury compared to the one that he suffered last year, like a very normal injury. But yeah, no, I mean, it looked like one of his better starts. It kind of reminds me of the Titans game last year or the Texans game last year, where it's like, this guy is the most unlucky quarterback ever because he has these great starts in these couple games and he just doesn't get to finish them because of injury. And it's like, maybe the key for him is every time he's not playing great football, he just gets hurt. like he doesn't get hurt when he plays. When he plays great football, he gets hurt. When he doesn't play great football is when he's healthy. I don't know. It's like a curse or something on this poor guy, but really, really promising start from him. I thought we were seeing some really good things, and hopefully, I mean, look, the short pass to Downs was good. Hopefully that's something that is just going to be back now with Downs fully integrated back in the offense. We'll see. We'll see exactly what it looks like this week if he goes, but really promising start from Richardson. And I really wish he could have finished it, but I understand the Colts being cautious and holding him out in the September game.
Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked on Colts. You can follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks2. I hope Richardson plays this week, obviously, because I think he's better than Flacco. I think he gives the Colts a better chance to win, but also because to start the show, I said that I would rather have him as my quarterback than Trevor Lawrence based off of what Lawrence has done so far through these first 4 weeks. He's been awful. Yeah. And the idea that Anthony Richardson could potentially be the second best quarterback in the division is kind of baffling. But what do you kind of think about Trevor Lawrence? Do you think that his struggles are going to continue? Because I don't. This is by far the worst year of his career so far. I think eventually he kind of reverts back to being a 63% completion guy as opposed to 53%, and he starts to kind of at least put some sort of pressure on defenses. But he's been awful. Why do you think that is, and do you think that continues against the Colts?
Yeah, man, the Jaguars are just in a brutal place, and I was pretty high on them coming into the season. I really liked their defense and their defensive coordinator. I know their defense is pretty banged up right now, but I love their defense coordinator. I thought they had the right pieces on offense, not fantastic pieces, but I mean, you're still giving maybe not the best offensive line, but guys that you've drafted high or guys that you've paid on that offensive line. You got Evan Ingram at tight end. You got Brian Thomas Jr. coming in as a first-round pick. Christian Kirk's solid. Gabe Davis is fine for what he is. It's a pretty solid roster right there, and nothing's clicking. They're just doing – it feels like they're doing everything wrong, and Lawrence is kind of at the forefront of that. It does make it harder for a fan base to justify their quarterback struggling when it's the situation that Lawrence is in, where you've been in the same system for years. I think he's 25 years old now at this point, just got paid the big contract. For us here in Indy, every time Richardson struggles, it's look, this kid is in his first 8 games. He's 22 years old. Quarterbacks typically don't figure it out until they have at least a season and a half of play underneath their belt, and they hit that 23, 24-year-old mark. So it's easier for us to kind of justify Richardson's struggles. I don't really know what you can do to justify Lawrence's struggles. The inaccuracies are baffling. The deep ball misses, which is something that he's always had in his repertoire throughout his entire career, is just gone right now. Brian Thomas Jr. has a little bit of a connection with him, but not great. And they're just missing a lot of layups and stuff like that too. And I know it's not all on him because they got Press Taylor calling plays, and we know how that goes. I mean, we had Press Taylor here in Indy for a little bit. It just never works when Press Taylor is involved in anything. But at the end of the day, when you're getting paid nearly $300 million, whatever he's getting paid, it's a ton of money that he's getting paid. You're getting paid to figure this stuff out. You can't struggle like this. And especially when you're a guy who doesn't have the opportunity for leeway, like Pat Mahomes is struggling right now, but he's historically one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play in terms of his resume. He's back-to-back Super Bowl champion. You can give him leeway when he struggles because he has the background.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence, his claim to fame is former first overall pick and was a Pro Bowler 2 years ago and had a pretty good year then. But aside from that, he's had a lot of struggles in the NFL. And it's kind of at the point where it's is this who he is? Again, we have this conversation with Richardson, but 8 games in, we can't say this is who he is yet because we don't know. But Trevor Lawrence, we have 50 games of him in college, and then we have 50 games in the NFL or whatever it is now, tons of film on this guy. And by his age 25 season, after he's getting paid, he shouldn't be struggling like this, regardless of the situation around him. So, yeah, man, it's been rough for them. I do think with how battered this Colts defense is, it's a good get-right opportunity for him to get out there and sling the ball around a little bit. The Colts are going to be potentially starting Adam Gossett at defensive end or something in this game. Like Trevor or what was it? Tyquan Lewis just went on IR like right before we jumped on the call. So it's a good situation for him to bounce back. But I don't know, man. They've just kind of been doing everything wrong to start this season. I mean, they're the only winless team in football right now. And I know I'm saying all this, and they're going to beat the Colts by 30 because it's at Jacksonville. So it doesn't really matter too much, I guess. But they seem like they're spiraling. Like it seems like the players are not believing in the coaches. The coaches are not believing in the players, and their quarterback's just not playing good ball. And it's a horrible spot to be when you've just kind of went all, like they didn't go like all in, but they paid some big money this offseason. And the result is 0-4 with your big time quarterback like struggling. Like that's the worst possible place you could be in.
It really is. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts. The interesting thing with the Jaguars is they could very easily be 2-2, and I guess that's just the nature of the NFL. Every game's close. You know, if Etienne doesn't fumble the ball walking into the end zone against Miami, they probably win that game. They got the ball 4th and goal from the 1 against the Texans on Sunday. If they score there, they go up by 10. They probably win that game. They didn't, obviously, and they lose. And so they've been like on the cusp of winning multiple times. They just haven't been able to get it done. And, you know, that's why the Chiefs are 4-0, because Mahomes figures out how to get it done. And, you know, Trevor Lawrence and the Jags don't. But that's, like I said, that's the nature of the NFL. I have some tape questions for you, because I know you go back and you watch the All-22 and you do all that. I thought one of the most impressive things from the Colts against the Steelers was that TJ Watt's name was never called. What did the Colts do to keep him from wrecking the game on Sunday?
Yeah, they used a lot of chips, which, oh man, my good buddy, I think his name is Eric Weingarten or whatever. I can't remember how he goes about on Twitter. I think it's like @Swami or something like that on Twitter. I had to recheck that before I shot him out, but he put up like TJ Watt's career against the chip or whatever, against getting chips from tight ends or from running backs. And his pass rush win rate just plummets when he's being chipped and getting that extra attention. Now, this doesn't mean he's a bad player. Like, when you're facing a chip, like it's tough and you're getting a lot of attention. But
and you're only getting chipped because you're a great player. Yeah.
Right. He's a fantastic player, like one of the best in football. And he honestly had quite a few wins in this game too that Flacco and Richardson just barely avoided. But the Colts did a really good job of, on those money downs, chipping him and getting a lot of attention his way and making sure that he was corralled on a lot of those. And then the times that it was one-on-one, I mean, Braden Smith, it wasn't always pretty, because it's never going to be pretty every single snap against a TJ Watt, but he was able to fend him off and kind of get him out of the way. So, yeah, I think some of it was the game plan. Again, a lot of quick passes. The Colts' time to throw in this game was like 2.6, I think. 2.6. I think it was their fastest time to throw in a game this season. I know part of that is because Flacco was in there instead of Richardson, but, you know, it was kind of a quicker game plan, getting the ball out of their hands. They did a good job with the chips. Miley Cox was giving good rocks to Watt a lot of the game. And then the times that it was one-on-one, I mean, Braden Smith, good enough tackle to fend off TJ Watt. But a lot of combination of things there. But at the end of the day, you know what? TJ Watt finished the game with 2 tackles and no pressures. Like, that's the best possible scenario for going against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense that has a lot of good pass rushers, man. It was a good pass rush group that they were going against.
It really was. It was really impressive. Only 2 sacks. This offensive line has been really good all year. And coming into the game, I was a little nervous. No Ryan Kelly, right? Hurt his neck, not playing. So insert rookie 4th round pick from Wisconsin, Tanner Bortolini. I thought he was really good dealing with Cam Hayward, one of the better, defensive tackles in the league. But he's been around for a bit. Was he good enough to warrant a conversation around not bringing Ryan Kelly back next year?
I think it's a conversation for sure. Back on the film, it wasn't like a stellar day by any means by Bortolini. Like it was good enough. Like he was good. He was pretty solid in the run game. He had good eyes and pass protection. He did get rocked quite a few times one-on-one. I mean, Hayward and Keanu Benton as well, the nose tackle that they have there, are just 2 of the strongest, like most physical. I mean, Quentin Nelson was put on his heels a couple of times in this game too, because those 2 guys are 2 of the best in football. So it's going to happen, but there were quite a few plays where Bortolini did get blown up. But at the end of the day, like, we're talking about a 22-year-old center who's been a healthy scratch the first 3 games. Like, he wasn't expected to be a starter, and he came in kind of cold and did well enough for the Colts offense to be functional in this game. And that's all you can really ask. So I think it's a conversation after the season, see where he's at with his, his strength, his conditioning, and how ready he is to handle protection calls and stuff, because the Colts like to do protection calls from their center. But from everything we saw in this game, like, it looked like a good start from him. It looked like, how Will Fries or Bernhard Raimann looked towards the end of their first year starting, where it's like, yeah, it's not perfect, but you can see the foundations there for a good offensive lineman in the future. And then obviously they came back in 2023 last year, and they both looked outstanding in their first full season starting. And now both of them are like the best linemen on the team besides Quentin Nelson. Like, those two are just ascending every single day.
Yeah.
So your hope is with Tanner Bortolini, if he gets out there for a couple times this year, like, he can keep growing like those guys did. And then at the end of the season, it might be that conversation like it was with Fries and Ryman, where it's like, we could bring someone else in, or we could bring Kelly back, but let's see what this kid has. I mean, especially if they bring back Will Fries, like, then we have all these other good players around him. Let's see what Bortolini can do with these good players around him. And I could totally see the argument for Bortolini being the starter next season.
Okay. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked on Colts, a Colts podcast that you can get wherever you get your podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks2. Two more questions for you, Zach, and I will let you go. So every time Laiatu Latu walks onto the field, I'm watching him because I'm just so curious to see what he looks like. He's the Colts' first-round pick, first defensive player off the board. I think he's been really good to start the year. The sacks aren't there, the total tackles aren't there, but I feel like he's been impactful, especially in obvious passing downs. Are you seeing the same thing? How good do you think Laiatu Latu's been to start the year?
Yeah, he's real close, man. Like, I really think, like, you can see how much further along he is than the Kwity Paye's or the Dio Dangbos in their first years out there with the Colts, where those guys were just like pure athletes ramming into offensive players in front of them. And maybe occasionally you get the flash from them. Where Laiatu Latu, it feels like he's winning so many pass rush reps, and he's getting penetration in the backfield, and he's forcing quarterbacks to move off their spot. He's just not finishing plays yet. Like, he's like an inch away from getting off the offensive lineman. The quarterback breaks away, or what we saw when he played against Caleb Williams 2 weeks ago. It's like Williams was spinning out of like 10 sacks from Latu in that game, or stuff like that. I mean, we even saw it with Justin Fields this past game too, a couple of that field stuff. But I do think he's right there, like you said. Like, he's really close. And that's usually a great sign for pass rushers, because sack production is a little bit volatile. If you have a season like this where, say, Latu finishes this year leading the team in pressures, like with 50 pressures or something like that, odds are next season, even if he finishes this year with like 2 or 3 sacks, odds are next season those are going to convert more to sacks, and you'll have a pass rusher that gets 8, 9, 10 sacks or something like that. It's a great indicator of future production. So I think he's close, man. He's really close. He's still a rookie. I know he's an older rookie, so you have higher expectations for him, but he's still a rookie. He's still learning how to fully disengage and handle these much faster and more athletic and more stable quarterbacks, I guess, than what college quarterbacks are. If you touch them, they fall down in college. These guys are a lot more just nimble in the NFL. So I think he's going to eventually figure it out, and I think he's going to have a strong second half of this season, because he's getting the wins. He's setting the edge really well in the pass game, and he's getting around the corner. It's just not finishing the plays and getting guys down for sacks. Typically that indicates a guy who's going to have a pretty strong second half of the year, or a pretty strong second season in the NFL.
There you go. That's kind of how I feel. I feel like he's there, not every down that he's in there to pass rush, but it feels like he wins a lot. I haven't checked the number of pressures he has on the season, but I'm assuming that it's a pretty decent number. Last question for you, Zach, and I'll let you go. So earlier in the show, I did this thing called my 2-2 tiers. There are 13 teams in the NFL that are 2-2, and they are not all the same, right? Like the Ravens are 2-2, the Packers are 2-2. They feel like definite playoff teams. And so for the Colts, I put them in this potential playoff team kind of tier, where it's like if they made the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised. If they missed the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised either. Is that kind of how you feel about the Colts through the first 4 weeks, or do you have a definitive lean one way or the other on whether or not the Colts could be or are a playoff team?
Yeah, I think, Yeah, but like you said, all 2-2 teams are not created equal. Like a team like the Chicago Bears are probably a little bit like closer to being non-playoff teams, where teams like the Ravens are closer to being playoff teams. Like you mentioned, I think the Colts are firmly in that like NFL middle class, but like I know that scares a lot of people listening, hearing the Colts are in the NFL middle class, but it's a very different middle class this season. It's a middle class because of a young quarterback figuring stuff out. He's going to have so many highs and so many lows. They're a well-coached team in terms of offensive system, and even though their defense has their flaws, like they are an aggressive, hard-playing like they have guys on defense that can make some plays, so they're just not going to roll over in a lot of games, so to speak, on defense. So I do think they're going to be a team that finishes around like 7 to 9. If they really figure it out, maybe 10 wins this season. Like they feel like one of those teams that can beat anybody, but can also lose to anybody.
Yeah.
Like there's no game I'm looking at the schedule being like, that's an easy win. There's winnable games for sure. Like I know that they have the curse this weekend, but like this is a very winnable game against Jacksonville.
Yeah.
It's a winnable game against Tennessee. It's a winnable game against Miami the week after, especially considering their quarterback play. Very winnable games to end the season, the final 5 games of the year. But then they have that 5-game stretch in between those two, which I'm not going to say is unwinnable, but like tough, very, very tough stretch in the middle of the season there. So this season could really go either way for the Colts. I don't expect them to win every game that they're favored in, but I also don't expect them to lose every game where they're going against a better opponent. Like I could totally see them dropping a game against like a Denver Broncos late in the season, but pulling off an upset over a Buffalo Bills, or probably not Detroit Lions. That's a little that they feel
They're
feel like on a
good.
different tier.
Watching them,
They're
like
good.
like Seattle, I like Seattle coming into the year, and I'm watching them last time. I'm like, yeah, I still think Seattle's really good. I still think their defense is one of the best in the league. The Lions are just incredibly talented.
Yeah. So I don't know if I would say the Colts could upset that, or it's likely, but like I don't know, this Colts team, I think because they're good enough coached, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They have enough talent, especially if they get guys back from injury, because that's a big part of all this. And they have a quarterback where, again, like I know he's not fully there yet, but if he does figure it out, they can contend with anybody. It's about just if he figures it out, become functional enough on offense, then they can really contend with anybody. So, yeah, I think that's a good bucket to put them in. I think just kind of the NFL's middle class with being they could be a playoff team or they could just barely miss out. But I think they're going to be a firm like 7-ish, 8-ish, 9-ish win team, like kind of in that range this year. And then your hope is for next year, if Richardson really puts it together, is when you can really take off and this team can get to that next level.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm excited. I've got probably too much hope after watching that first drive and a half from Anthony
Yeah,
Richardson. I mean,
I
he
feel it.
just like he was carving up arguably the best defense in the NFL, and it felt easy. Like I'm sure it wasn't, but like it felt easy. And I'm just, I'm trying not to get my hopes up, man. But I'm excited for the rest of the year. I'm excited to see what he looks like. Hopefully, we don't see any more Joe Flacco. It's not a knock on Joe Flacco. That's I want Anthony Richardson to develop and figure out
Yeah.
what the Colts have. So, Zach,
Yeah.
thanks for your time, man. When does the next pod come out?
Tuesdays we typically take off unless we have something kind of pressing, which Tyquan Lewis injury might be something that we record. So maybe later today because the Tyquan injury, but if not, then tomorrow we'll be back with probably just injury updates and talking about this upcoming curse game against the Jaguars. You know how it is. Really fun week going at Jacksonville.
Certainly they beat them. They're so bad.
I hope so, man. I don't know. The 2018 Colts won like 10 games in a row. The only loss in there was a 6-0 loss to the Jaguars.
That's true. That's very true. Zach, thanks for your time, man. You were great as always.
Of course, man. You have a good one.
You too. That is Zach Hicks. Follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks2. You can also check out that Locked On Colts podcast wherever you get your podcast. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I've got thoughts on Trevor Lawrence, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, all those things when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, I greatly appreciate it. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there, subscribe to the channel and join the live stream. Maybe you're watching on Twitter. Follow us at Ticket1430. Follow me there as well at __ Jonathan Smith. Maybe you're listening via the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps, App Store, Google Play Store, wherever. You can also listen to the Dan Dockich on that show or on that app. Or maybe you're tuning in on the radio, 1430 AM, driving around, listening. We greatly appreciate it, no matter how you're listening. We would also greatly appreciate it if you showed up and met me and the one and only Dan Dockich at this event that we have coming up, Bourbon and Birdies, presented by Payless Liquors. It's on October 26th at Back 9. It's going to be an absolute blast. Get your all-in ticket to enjoy unlimited bourbon and food samples. Get an hour in a bay. If you've never been to Back 9, just imagine a better version of Top Golf. Okay, get your ticket online, IndySportsTicket.com. Heaven Hill, the official bourbon of Bourbon and Birdies, is going to be there. Also, Birdie Brown Straight Wheat Whiskey and Tom Bullock's Burnt Orange Bourbon will be there as well, with so many other bourbons. I love bourbon. I don't know about you. It's the best. There's nothing better than after a long week, Friday night, pouring a nice little glass of bourbon and just sipping it. Oh, it's the best. For a full bourbon list, head over to IndySportsTicket.com. You can buy your tickets while you are there as well. Now, breaking news in the world of college basketball. Gonzaga set to join the Pac-12, leaving the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference. Doesn't have much of an impact on IU, but interesting move there by Gonzaga. They're actually going to have to compete to win their conference now. We're going to get to see them play Arizona and teams like that every year. It's going to be fun. So I think that's a good move for college basketball. I think it'll help Gonzaga as well, kind of getting better throughout the season. So big move there from the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Now, I watched Monday Night Football last night. I hope you did as well. Watched one game a little bit more than the other, especially because that Dolphins-Titans game was brutal. Will Levis was bad. He got hurt last night. He's clearly worse than Anthony Richardson. I mean, this is the worst quarterback division in the NFL. Therefore, it is the worst division in the NFL. Okay, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence, and Will Levis. That is the worst foursome of quarterbacks in the league, and it isn't close. The NFC South is awful, but the NFC South is better than the AFC South. I think everyone would agree with that, just because the quarterbacks in that division are better, and so much of a team's success is reliant upon their starting quarterback. And I love Trevor Lawrence, but I can tell you right now, I'm taking the Colts to win on Sunday because Anthony Richardson has played better this year than Trevor Lawrence has. It's really that simple. Trevor Lawrence is only completing 53% of his passes on the year. His yards per attempt is only 6. He's not throwing the ball down the field. He's not moving the chains on third down. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 11 of 44 on third downs this year. The only positive thing that Trevor Lawrence has done this year is not turn the ball over. Four touchdown passes to 1 interception, which really isn't even that great. 4 touchdowns through 4 games. Come on now. He's not keeping drives alive. He's not creating big, explosive plays. If you look at scoring in the NFL this year, it's down because teams aren't capitalizing on big, explosive plays. There just aren't as many of them. And that's something that the Colts have done well, especially when Anthony Richardson's in the game. Just looking ahead to Sunday, I think Anthony Richardson generates 1 or 2 big, explosive plays down the field, and that ultimately winds up being the difference, with the Colts hopefully winning and breaking that curse. That's kind of how I feel right now. I'm sure my opinion will be modified throughout the week, but the Colts have an outside chance at making the playoffs. 2-2, bouncing back after the 0-2 start. They're in an awful division. Okay, if they can win 3 of 4 games against the Jaguars and the Titans, I'll like their chances at getting in. They sweep them, they win all 4, then I'll really like their chances. of making it into the playoffs. This Colts team, they're interesting. I wouldn't call them fun. I wouldn't call them bad. I would call them interesting because we just never know what we're going to get week to week. I had Zach Hicks on in the last segment, and he said it exactly right. Like if the Colts lost to the Jags on Sunday, like we wouldn't be surprised. And then if they turned around and they beat the Bills later in the year, we wouldn't be surprised because there's just so much volatility with this Colts team. Like the best version of this Colts team can beat anybody, and the worst version of this Colts team can lose to anybody. And yeah, like that's just the way that this Colts team is. I wouldn't say it's fun, but it's definitely entertaining. Looking forward to Sunday. Hopefully the Colts can break this Jacksonville curse, having not won down there in 9 years. New blood in the building, new starting quarterback, new head coach. Hopefully that's what it takes to turn the tide. If the Colts can win on Sunday, I'll actually feel pretty decent about their chances at making the playoffs. They started 2-2. Not all 2-2 teams are built the same. I'm going to give you my 2-2 tiers when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, it is greatly, greatly appreciated. I was going to do my NFL 2 and 2 tiers list, but instead, I want to talk about Pete Rose. I changed my mind. I'm going to let it do that. Pete Rose passed away yesterday, 1 o'clock. The one and only Rob Dibble's going to join Dan's show. Should be a great interview. He played for Pete Rose when he was obviously playing with the Reds. And it sucks, like anytime anyone passes away, Mutombo a couple days ago, and then, of course, Pete Rose yesterday. It's not fun, right? But it leads to people thinking back on and having memories of these different great generational athletes. And Pete Rose should have been put in the Hall of Fame. Okay? Like, he should firmly be in the Hall of Fame. And my argument for him to be in the Hall of Fame, it's not based on much. I just simply believe that the all-time Major League Baseball hits leader should be in the Hall of Fame. And I think it's really that simple. And I know what people are going to say, oh, but he bet on baseball. I gotta be honest, I don't care that he bet on baseball. He was an awesome baseball player. Okay. Barry Bonds should probably be in the Hall of Fame as well. I don't care that he did steroids. Oh, but Jonathan, it ruins the integrity of the game. What about the integrity of the game? Yeah, I really don't care when it comes to the Barry Bonds thing. Taking steroids wasn't illegal when he played. Why are we keeping someone out of the Hall of Fame for not breaking a rule? It doesn't make sense to me, okay? They were both, Pete Rose and Barry Bonds, they were both great baseball players that contributed to the history of baseball. And these Hall of Fames, they are supposed to be museums to their sport. And museums, what do? They tell the history of whatever their museum is about. Okay, I had the great opportunity this summer, my wife and I, we went to Washington, D.C., and we went to as many of the Smithsonians as we could. If you can go, you should go. They're all really cool. The best one, though, Air and Space Museum. So fascinating. Just seeing how, flight has changed over time and how the Wright brothers were originally, bike mechanics. That's what they were. And then they took what they knew about bikes and they applied it to flight, and they created these planes, and you see the evolution of flight over time, and it is fascinating. It's incredibly fascinating. But here's the thing. If the Smithsonian of Air and Space skipped a generation of planes, and they're like, you know what? We are not going to include these planes for whatever reason, then that would greatly violate the integrity of showing the history of flight. It would. And not having Pete Rose, the all-time hits leader, which is the number one goal whenever you walk up to the plate and you have an at-bat. Right? Like, the goal is to get a hit and to get on base. The guy who did that more times than anyone else in the history of baseball, that guy's not in the Hall of Fame, and that is ridiculous. Hall of Fames are supposed to be museums to their sport. So players that have significant history in the game should be in the Hall of Fame. So that includes Pete Rose. That includes guys from the steroid era. The most entertaining era of baseball is nowhere to be found in the Hall of Fame. And that is simply wrong. Just like how it's wrong to keep the all-time hits leader out of the Hall of Fame. I get it. He bet on baseball. That's a no-no. You shouldn't do it. But if you know anything about Pete Rose and how hard he played and how much he wanted to win, do you really think that his gambling impacted the way that he coached or the way that he played? The answer is no. The answer is no. And I sadly never got to see him play. I think I would have loved him because I have an immense amount of respect and appreciation for any professional athlete in any sport that consistently play hard. And when it comes to Pete Rose, this is a guy who played hard for 162 games. And in this era of load management in, every sport except for football, I think I really would have appreciated and loved to see him play. Okay, I love guys that play hard, and that was kind of his mantra. A guy who got a whole bunch of hits and played incredibly hard every time he went out there. Okay, and what's crazy, and part of why I'm so fond of Pete Rose is, I played baseball in college. Never forget. Showed up my freshman year. I wouldn't say I was out of my depth, but I was struggling a little bit. Okay, and so I'm looking for just baseball advice from anybody, and I come across this, video of Pete Rose talking about slumps, and he gives just this super simplistic advice, right? And he starts it off by saying, Major League Baseball players, they're in the major leagues because of their swing. And so quickly when guys struggle, they change their swing. That's the first thing that they do. And he's like, you shouldn't do that. He's like, because the reason why you're in the major leagues is because of your swing. He's like, just change where you're at in the box. And he walks through this thing and he's like, if the fastball's getting to you, like back up in the box. If you're getting jammed, back away from the plate. If the breaking ball's getting to you, scoot up in the box. If you're capping everything, scoot towards the plate. He walks through this super simplistic explanation. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And I applied it. I ended up having a pretty decent freshman year, right? And it was just amazing. He's an absolute legend in every sense of the word. It's sad that he's passed, and hopefully, I doubt that they will, because baseball refuses to get anything right. It's one of my many, many frustrations when it comes to Major League Baseball. So they probably won't put him in the Hall of Fame, but they undoubtedly should. Okay, he is a major piece of the history of baseball, and that needs to be in the Hall of Fame. And we're about to add another piece of baseball history to the Hall of Fame here soon. The Major League Baseball playoffs start today. I watch very little regular season baseball. Very little. But I watch a lot of playoff baseball. Playoff baseball is magical. There's nothing like it. I don't know. It gets my juices going. It gets me so excited every time. And the Tigers, they play today at 2:30, taking on the Astros. They're one of the best stories in baseball. They've just kind of had this late surge, and it's been just incredible to watch. I love watching the Astros play. I like the Astros. I know some people don't because of the cheating scandal. You want to talk about cheating? What the Astros did in 2017, that is cheating, not the steroids thing when steroids weren't even illegal. But anyway, the Astros, very different team. Love Jose Altuve. That's my guy. I should have worn his jersey today. I just wasn't thinking about it. You'll probably see it tomorrow if they win today. But Astros, Tigers should be a lot of fun to watch. Royals, Orioles. Bobby Witt Jr. is one of the most electric players in baseball right now. Young, hitting for power, stealing bases, playing great defense, doing all the things that a great shortstop should do. Playing the Orioles, another team just littered with young talent. Gunnar Henderson, starting shortstop for them, great player. Heston Kjerstad, DH, and hitting bombs. They're a lot of fun. Adley Rutschman, one of the best young catchers in the league. Like the Orioles and Royals, that game is going to be just an absolute blast to watch. Mets, Brewers, I like watching the Mets. I don't know if you do or not. I love Francisco Lindor. I just love good middle infielders. Like there's nothing better than a shortstop that makes every play and can step up to the plate and get a knock when you need it. There's nothing better than that. So love Lindor. Enjoy watching the Mets. Braves, Padres tonight. That game's going to be quite fun. Padres, late season surge, right, to finish 93-69. Another one of the better teams in baseball. More games, obviously, tomorrow. Can't wait. Like these wild card games, like the wild card series, like they're always fun. They're always so much fun. Then of course the NL and ALDS starts on Saturday, October 5th. Playoff baseball's here. It's one of the best things that happens in sports. Crazy, memorable moments happen all the time. One of the nice things about baseball is that it's so slow paced that like you don't miss the moments. You know, like there are moments in like football games or basketball games even, unless it's like a game-winning shot, that something important will happen. But because, the NFL is so much faster pace and they're running the play a little quicker, or especially in college football where everyone runs a no-huddle offense, that like the next play happens so fast that sometimes you'll kind of miss the importance of the previous play. Not in baseball. You feel the weight of every pitch, and that is part of why playoff baseball is so incredibly special. That's going to do it here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back again tomorrow from 10 to noon. Rob Dibble, 1 o'clock on the Dan Dockett Show. Dan Dockett on the air from noon to 3. You're not going to want to miss that interview. Rob played for Pete Rose. Should be great just to kind of hear Rob's thoughts on what he did for the game of baseball. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. I will talk to you then. Go Colts. Hopefully they win Sunday. I'll have more thoughts on that tomorrow.